At the age of 68, Harold Simmons considered himself retired, not just from his career as a postman, but from all forms of drama. That was, until the gnome incident. It started innocently enough on a warm Thursday morning. Harold was sipping his black coffee on the porch, eyeing the newest addition to his neighbor Betty's yard, a hideous 3-foot-tall garden gnome wearing sunglasses and riding a flamingo. Good grief, Harold muttered, that's an abomination. Betty, 71 and proud owner of 12 other gnomes, noticed his scowl and waved cheerily. Meet Fabio, she shouted across the hedge. He's here to bring zest to the block. Harold grunted in reply and retreated inside. If zest meant terrorizing passers-by with a flamingo-riding goblin, then sure, mission accomplished. Blank. An idea is born. By Saturday, Fabio the gnome had somehow multiplied. Betty now had 2 new additions, one gnome lounging in a tiny bathtub, and another lifting miniature weights. Harold couldn't bear it anymore. I'm forming an intervention, he announced at the next coffee club gathering at Rosewood Community Center. The club members, an illustrious group including Mabel, George, Shirley, and Clarence, leaned in with interest. She's addicted, Harold said seriously. First it's a gnome, next it's gnome-themed Christmas, gnome weddings, gnome tattoos. Mabel gasped, not tattoos. George chuckled into his donut. What do you propose, Harold? An intervention? No, Harold said, lowering his voice. A rescue mission. Clarence leaned closer. You mean, steal the gnomes? Borrow, Harold corrected, temporarily, to make a point. The group exchanged glances. Mabel looked downright giddy. Clarence cracked his knuckles. Operation Gnome away from home is a go, Shirley said with a gleam in her eye. The plan. Harold, naturally, was the planner. Step 1. Wait until Betty left for her weekly Tai Chi class. Step 2. Swiftly and silently remove a few gnomes, not all. Just enough to cause alarm. Step 3. Leave a ransom note, in rhyming verse, of course. Step 4. Hide the gnomes around the neighborhood in creative locations. Step 5. Return the gnomes after Betty begged for mercy, or at least promised not to buy any more. Simple, foolproof, glorious. The heist. At precisely 9 a.m. on Tuesday, Betty's blue Honda Civic backed out of the driveway. Harold, Shirley, George, Mabel, and Clarence assembled like a geriatric Ocean's 11. Clarence, the lookout, whistled low. All clear. Harold and Shirley crept across the lawn, wielding pillowcases. Get Fabio first, Mabel whispered urgently from behind a bush. Harold grabbed the sunglasses-wearing gnome. It was heavier than expected, like lugging a stubborn toddler made of concrete. Shirley, meanwhile, wrangled the bathtub gnome, nearly toppling into the birdbath. After 10 breathless minutes, they retreated triumphantly, clutching 3 gnomes. The ransom. Later that afternoon, Harold penned the ransom note in perfect cursive. We've borrowed your gnome wife friends for a bit. To curb this garden's gnomeitis pit. Find them hidden. Find them quick. Or else they'll learn a new gnome trick. Mabel drew little smiley faces in the margins for extra effect. They taped the note to Betty's front door and waited. The aftermath. Betty returned at noon. The neighborhood watched from behind curtains as she walked up the steps. She read the note. She looked at the empty spots in the garden. She gasped. And then, she laughed. Not just a chuckle, a full belly laugh that had her doubling over, clutching her stomach. Well, she crowed, waving the note triumphantly. A challenge. Betty Simmons, it turned out, had been on her college scavenger hunt team, and she took the gnome rescue as a personal mission. The gnome hunt. By 2 p.m., Betty had found the first gnome, Fabio, sitting in Harold's mailbox, sunglasses slightly askew. By 3:30 p.m., she located the bathtub gnome floating, with some difficulty, in the miller's koi pond. By 4 p.m., she found the weightlifting gnome atop the community center's flagpole, thanks to George's grandson and a very long ladder. Each discovery was accompanied by a victorious shout. By sunset, the neighborhood gathered on Harold's lawn, laughing and clapping as Betty posed with her rescued gnomes. You hooligans, she declared. This is the most fun I've had in years. Harold, a little embarrassed, scratched his head. We just wanted you to, slow down on the gnomes. Betty patted his arm. Honey, I already ordered 2 more yesterday. Harold groaned. Blank. Underscore. Blank. A new tradition. From that day on, Betty and Harold became the ringleaders of the Gnome Games, a monthly tradition where residents would hide gnomes around the neighborhood for prizes. One month, George painted a gnome gold and called it the Golden Gnome Trophy. Another month, Mabel dressed one in a tiny Elvis outfit. Clarence, ever the prankster, once rigged a gnome to play Tiny Dancer whenever someone walked past. Each hunt ended with lemonade, laughter, and a trophy ceremony where Betty would solemnly crown the new gnome master. Harold, initially reluctant, ended up winning twice, mostly because he had secret hiding spots in the rosebushes. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Reflection. Late one evening, after another successful gnome hunt, Harold sat on his porch. Fabio the gnome proudly perched next to him. Betty wandered over, holding 2 mugs of cocoa. "You know," she said, handing him a mug, "I think you needed this more than I did." Harold smiled. "Maybe so. I guess there's still some mischief left in these old bones." Betty clinked her mug against his. "Long live the gnomes, and the troublemakers who love them." And under the twinkling porch light, as laughter drifted across the neighborhood, Harold had to admit, retirement wasn't about peace and quiet. It was about finding new ways to stir up just the right amount of wonderful, ridiculous chaos.